Hello.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Am I audible to you, sir?
Come again, sorry?
Am I audible to you?
Yes.
Okay, sir. So we will start shortly. Just Vinit sir making some arrangements.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we are good to go. Can
Should I put on my camera or what do I do?
sir, just give us a second. First introduction. Jaina, please proceed.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Yes, we are good to go.
Hello, everyone. I, Jaina Morakia, welcome you to all on one day international webinar on ecosystem for startup. PU Educational Services is a 3-year-old young startup. We cater into preparing a student for various competitive exams and also provide mentoring session and corporate trainings. Talking about our Associates Institute for Professional Development, well known as IPD, is based in Malta, is a leading provider of professional education and training with a strong commitment to provide high quality and relevant education and trainings. IPD aims at delivering a portfolio of continuous professional development programs to individuals and organizations who want to continuously grow and develop. All programs are developed by subject matter experts using the high quality standards. Our approach to development ensures that every decision is taken, is planned, and ultimately contribute to the achievements of your development objectives. Please note, I request all participants not to post their introduction or any greetings in the chat box. Participants can be posed their questions if any required. I would introduce to hand over my colleague Venkatesh, who is moderator for this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaina, for the introduction. Venkatesh Usane, will be your moderator for today. I will now introduce you to our today's speaker from Institute of Professional Development of Malta, Mr. Joshua Zammit. Mr. Joshua holds 20 years of experience in field of management in private and public sector with extensive international experience. After graduating from the University of Malta, he continued his studies at postgraduate level at the University of Hull in UK, graduating with a master degree in industrial psychology. He has also been a part of business excellence program with the School of Management at Cranfield University. Mr. Joshua has proven track record and understanding of business and organization matter gained through his experience in C-level and board positions. He also acted as an advisor to the government of Malta on a number of occasions. He has a vast experience in a wide range of industrial and currently works on a consultant with Novagro, the company he founded in 2011. Mr. Joshua has a deep interest in management and carries out teaching and research in the area. Now, I will ask Mr. Joshua to enlighten us with his valuable inputs on today's topic.
Thank you. Let me just. Hello, everyone, and thank you for that introduction. I will share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much for this introduction and for the possibility to speak at this webinar about ecosystems for startups. What I will be doing together with Vinit is that we will be talking about startups and the ecosystem required to ensure that startups are successful in their journey to growing and to becoming great companies. I wanted to just introduce a little bit the work that we have been doing in Malta with regards to the startups ecosystem in Malta. I will talk a little bit about Malta later on, but here in this country, the Maltese ecosystem, the startup ecosystem in Malta is quite new, although we do have quite a few number of people the number of startup companies going through the pipeline, it still is something that we are introducing and we are working quite hard on going forward. We have just launched a fund of around 1.2 million euros, which is there to assist startups in Malta. And new businesses that want to set up in the country can benefit of up to 200,000 euros in financial assistance. Now, why am I saying this? I just want to set the stage for what we are going to be doing in the next few slides. For anyone who maybe does not know where Malta is part of the European Union. It is this very small country here at the bottom of the screen. We are on the fringes of the European Union, right in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea between Europe and Africa. And for a very long time, Malta has been a bridge between North and South in the region. And we have played some very important roles in the way that we have managed the geopolitical situation in the region, as well as the roles that we have played in being good neighbors to Africa, specifically North Africa, and being members of the European Union. We provide an excellent springboard to companies and to organizations that want to work within an environment which is governed by the EU and the EU laws. Malta is a small country with just 450,000 people as population, and therefore, when you look at this country, you will see that we've managed to create some very strong industries, and we have managed to create excellent situations for businesses to grow and flourish. Why should one set up in Malta? There are a number of good reasons why that is possible. Primarily, Malta is a cosmopolitan island with a very rich history. We have some of the oldest temples known to mankind, and we have a very, very colorful and interesting history, which takes us back for obviously thousands and thousands of years. We are an EU member. As I've said, we are situated right in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, acting as a bridge between Europe and Africa, and therefore we have been a very strong location where people come, discuss, do business, do commerce, and start their own businesses here. When we compare ourselves to other EU countries, the cost of living in Malta is lower than most other EU countries, and we have very competitive salaries and wage structures. Our weather is very good. There is good work-life balance, and it is a very safe community, very family-centric, and although quite small, there is a lot of great things to do. We have an excellent healthcare system, and we have also a very good education system. And besides that, of more interest to people who want to set up their business here, we have a very beneficial taxation system. Besides that, the company registration process is very, very easy. The reason why I am saying all this is I just want to create a context about startups and the importance of having not just the funding, but also the total ecosystem which is required to support an organization and the people working in that organization, together with their families and together with the people who would want to work in this context. So that is why I am explaining a little bit what Malta is and what it is all about. What I want to do now is I want to explain also and discuss a little bit what are the main and most important things that make up a good startup ecosystem. And as we know, there are no real formula. There's no real formula, or there is no recipe that I can give you. And I say, if you do this recipe, for sure you're going to be successful. But there are a few key ingredients which are extremely important for us in order to be able to create an ecosystem where startups can flourish, where startups can become strong and can become large companies and are able to grow and succeed in the future. So obviously the first thing which is very important is you need to have startups. And this is a very, it stands to reason. It's a very important thing. If you don't have entrepreneurs, if you don't have people who are ready to start up their own companies and to, take the plunge and come up with ideas and start their own business, then it is useless. So the first and most important thing is you need to have startups and you need to have entrepreneurs who are ready to um, to set up their own companies and come up with their own ideas, which are great ideas to try and solve problems which society is facing. So that's the first point. The second point is then you need to have educational institutions, and we are lucky because both in Malta and in India we have an excellent educational system. I was looking at some of the numbers with regards to India about the number of people that graduate in engineering and in sciences, and the numbers are fantastic. And I think, in an ecosystem, having good education institutions is very, very important. Of course, education institutions can come in two ways. They can be public, government-owned, or private institutions, but they both contribute to the ecosystem which is required for startups to be able to flourish and grow in the way that we like them to grow. So education institutions is the second ingredient, which is very important. The third ingredient is funding. And again, funding is one of the most important aspects of any business and any startup. And when we talk about funding, we're talking about different forms of funding. Nowadays, we can look at different types of funding opportunities. Just to mention a few, you have venture capital, you have angel investors, you have private investors, you've got the banks in the sense of loans. You've got schemes, which in our case would be schemes offered by government or schemes offered by the European Union in the case of Malta. And I am aware that India has also a number of schemes which are offered, startup schemes which are offered by the government of India. And then obviously there is also the funding which comes from the people, from the entrepreneurs themselves, their friends and their families. And therefore, all of this is very important, having that structure around you, having that possibility to attract funding and to be able to pitch your ideas to investors who are ready to fund your ideas. That is another important aspect of the startup ecosystem that we look at. The fourth ingredient are incubators and accelerators. And what incubators and accelerators are, these are special vehicles that allow organizations, allow startups to grow and to grow in a fast way. And therefore, they will help, assist, support startup organizations to be able to move forward, grow, develop, make as little mistakes as possible, and try to achieve maturity as quickly as possible in order to be able to get a return and a gain on the investment that has been made into them. The fifth ingredient is working space. Every organization requires a space from where to work, and the ability and the possibility to create that working space, to be able to find that working space which is affordable, which has a community feeling in it, where you can discuss things with other entrepreneurs, with other advisors, with people who are already there to help you. That is also a very important aspect of the ecosystem. And having a good working space from where to launch your company and grow your company until you can stand on your own two feet and find then more adaptable working space for the company is also an important aspect of the ecosystem. The sixth point are service providers. And very often when we talk about ecosystems, we tend to forget a little bit about service providers, but it is important to appreciate that service providers are organizations, people like consultants, advisors, accountancy firms, and organizations such as this lawyers and legal firms that will provide a service at a fee, obviously, but will provide a service to startups who very often do not necessarily afford to have that service in-house, but may require help and may require the assistance of the service providers to be able to grow and to be able to establish themselves as operating companies in the area that they are working in. The seventh ingredient are mentors. And when we talk about mentors, these are a very crucial and very important aspect of the ecosystem, and that mentors are there to help assist the entrepreneurs. They help them. They help them with the difficulties, with the challenges that they are facing, and they guide them in overcoming those challenges in a positive way in order to make it as beneficial as possible to the entrepreneur, their idea, and their company. So mentors play an important role. And again, this is an important aspect of the ecosystem. Again, when we talk about startups, community, which is the eighth ingredient, is also a very important aspect. And what we mean by community is that very often when you are coming up with an idea, when you are developing an idea, when you are creating things, you cannot do it on your own. And you need the support of people around you, and being part of a community of like-minded individuals who are able to understand what you are going through and provide the support, but also more help you develop your ideas, is a very important aspect, especially in the initial stages of an organization and of the life of a business. Therefore, creating a community of like-minded individuals who are focused, who are able to support each other, who are able to help each other and grow together plays an essential role in having a successful startup ecosystem. Then, of course, we operate in an environment which has rules, and there is the government, and therefore having supportive government agencies who provide schemes, who provide support to startups is an important ingredient. And it is one of those ingredients that, although it is not completely essential, but it is a very important ingredient because they make life a lot easier. And a lot of countries have such organizations. In our case, we have Start Malta. I understand that India has also something similar as Start India. And therefore, there are different organizations, different government organizations that can support, provide funding, and provide assistance to startups in order to be able to grow. Startups play a very important role in the economy of the country, and therefore it pays governments and it pays government agencies to support and to help organizations, startups grow and develop. And obviously, last but not least, you need talent. And when we talk about talent, what we are talking about here is people who have great ideas. You need people who are able to implement the work that is being done. And the entrepreneurs would have their own ideas, but at the same time, you need people who are skilled at doing certain things. So if you are in the tech industry, for example, then you need technology experts, you need talent in technology, you need programmers, you need developers, you need people who are system integrators and things like that. If you are in the biopharma, for example, then you need pharmacists, you need biologists, you need chemists, you need talent, you need people who are able to contribute to the success of the idea and to the growth of the idea that the entrepreneurs would have in order to build that company. So what I've just done is I have presented to you 10 key ingredients which are very important for any ecosystem, for any startup ecosystem to be able to grow and flourish and be successful. Now, of course, this is the environment in which an organization, a startup, would be working. There are other aspects that one would need to look into, and these are very often dependent on the individuals themselves. So what I'm doing In this aspect here, I am giving you the idea or the infrastructure which is required for an ecosystem to work, in our opinion, obviously. What I'm going to do in the next slide is now giving you some tips which are important on a personal level. And this is the important thing. As an entrepreneur, these are some tips for you as an entrepreneur to achieve success with your startup. And I'll just go through them. There's quite a few here, but I'll try to go through them very quickly. The first one is you need to come up with an idea which solves a real problem, which solves a real need. Okay, and all good ideas are ideas which will attract or try to solve a big problem which society is facing. Okay, but it needs to be a real problem, one that people need solved, and I think that is a very important point. Your idea needs to be real. That's the first thing. The second thing is about leadership. When we talk about leadership, is it's not enough just to have a vision. It's not enough just to talk about leadership in terms of just an idea or a direction. It starts from there. It starts from having an idea. It starts from having a direction, because that is the foundation of your business. But at the end of the day, what matters is the extent of how much energy you are ready to put into the idea, how much energy you are ready to put into your drive, in order to show everyone working within the company, everyone working with you, that you really believe in this and that you are able to go ahead and go forward with this idea. Therefore, leadership is not just about saying nice things about your idea and about selling the vision of what it could be, but it's also showing that you are committed to that idea, that you have the drive for that idea, and that you are ready to do everything. That you are ready to do everything possible to be able to implement and make that idea a reality. Of course, then you need to put a team in place, and you need to select the right people for your team. No one can do anything on their own. So, we all know that we need help, we need people around us, and identifying and selecting the right people, good people around us, is a very, very important thing. And together with that is the identification of mentors. Mentors, as I've said earlier, play a very important role in startups, and they are able to support you as an entrepreneur, and guide you and help you not to do the mistakes that others do, who do not have such help. So you need to identify mentors in order to help you start developing your business, and help you navigate the labyrinth and the storms that you would be facing as an entrepreneur, going forward. And what is important is to not be afraid to ask for help. Do not be afraid to ask people to mentor you. I think that is an important part of the whole thing. And the guidance that they give you can be the difference between a successful venture and an unsuccessful one. Fifth is you need to create and establish your culture. And again, because a startup operates in the way that it operates, establishing the culture of the organization is important, because this is all about the ethos of the company and the frame of mind or the mindset of the people working within this company. So you need to think a little bit about what type of culture do you want, and how do you want this company to behave going forward. And it should also not only say who you are, but it also says how you do things and what you want to be. And therefore, the culture is very, very important. It's important here that I am referring to the culture of the organization, of the company, and not the national culture of the country that you are living in. Then, of course, you need to create the right business entity. And what we mean here is that you need to have a vehicle in order to be able to do business. In most countries, this would be a limited liability company or a registered company. But of course, you need to make sure that you protect yourself, and you need to make sure that if you are operating as a business, then you need to have the necessary legal structures which are there to support you, and at the same time which are there to protect you and protect your personal assets, which can be at risk if you are doing certain things. So it might seem early in the process, but we always suggest um, uh, and we always advise that entrepreneurs create the right business structures and the right legal entities that are required in order to be able to do their business. And tied to this is the other point about formalizing every agreement that you have. It's important again that, you know, when you are at the startup stage, paperwork might seem something that you don't want to do, and it might be, you know, something which is a waste of time. But the reality is that you need to protect yourself. And although it might seem boring and unnecessary, what you need to make sure is that if you have any agreements, then these agreements are drawn up and written and signed by the people who are parties to this agreement. Remember, if you have a signed contract, these tend to protect both you and the other parties. And it could be that, you know, you will never need to refer to these contracts, but it's important to have them. You know, when I am doing business, sometimes, you know, we do business with friends and people you know very well, but we still, you know, draw up an agreement between us. We draw that agreement and we sign it. It might go into the drawer and we don't pay any attention to it anymore. But if something happens, God forbid, you can always refer back to that agreement and see what you have agreed to before. So this is very important, to have the right legal entity in order to be able to do your business, and also to have signed contracts which clearly outline and which clearly explain what you and other third parties are doing together and how that relationship is going to be done. Of course, you need to protect your ideas and you need to protect your intellectual property. And again, sometimes we tend to get very excited about what we are doing, and we get very, it's important to be excited, and we talk to others about what we are doing, but you need to make sure that your ideas are protected so that they are not taken away from you by someone else. Again, so when you are talking to people, it's important that you don't always explain everything to anyone who is able to listen to you. But when you talk about your ideas in public, it's always a smart thing that anyone who is listening to you would have signed a non-disclosure agreement. NDAs are a very important tool that we use. And if you can protect your intellectual property through a patent or through some other form of registration, then that would be a good idea to do that. Remember that your idea is the most important thing in all this, and therefore you need to protect it as well as you can. Then number 9 is about developing an elevator pitch. And again, what do we mean by this? You need to ensure that when you are doing something, you are able to explain what you are trying to do in a very short time. And what we mean by an elevator pitch is the extent to which you are able to pitch your idea to a potential investor, to a potential partner or collaborator in a very short period of time, let's say 2-3 minutes, not more than that. And if you are able to develop that, then that is a good way forward and a good way to be able to talk about your ideas. Number 10 is competition. You will always find competition, but please do not be afraid of competition. If you are the only company in a particular market, then that could be a very big thing. And especially if you want to try and generate attention to the problem that you are trying to solve. But if competition enters your space, then don't let that scare you. I think competition is a very important indicator. It's a very important sign that you are doing something right. And therefore, because other people want a piece of your cake to a certain extent, then that shows that you have something which is interesting. And therefore, it looks like you are on the right tracks. Besides that, also, competition will help you focus and it will help you get better at what you are doing. And therefore, when you are talking and when you are operating in a startup environment, competition is a welcome thing because it just indicates that you are on the right track, but at the same time, it helps you focus and achieve a stronger improvement in what you are doing. Number 11, develop a plan, stick to it, but act quickly. And again, that is important. You need to have a very good plan. You need to understand what you are doing, and you need to understand what is the critical path of your business. What are the things that you need to do in order to achieve growth, in order to achieve success? But at the same time, it's not enough to just have a plan. You need to act on that plan and make sure that you are implementing that plan. That is very, very important. Okay, you can have very nice plans on paper, but if these plans are not implemented, then they are, unnecessary. They do not work. So that is very important, right? Act as quickly as possible. Of course, you need to be careful. Of course, you need to make sure that you have looked at all the risks that there are and you have mitigated those risks. But at some point, you need to implement things and move ahead. And that is very, very important. And also, because you have a plan, over there I write, you need to stick to it. Yes, you need to stick to your plan, you need to stick to your roadmap, but the reality is that things happen and sometimes you need to change things. So that is okay. We live in a world which is changing all the time, which is changing very, very fast. And therefore, because of that, we are not always able to stick to the plans that we are making. But the important thing, the crucial thing you are planning is that you implement and act according to the plan that you are doing. Number 12 is about learning. And learning is very, very important. You should not stop learning ever. And again, this is an essential thing because things develop and new things come into the picture, and therefore you need to continue learning. So never stop learning. Number 13 is show and establish your area of expertise. And again, part of the success of your business depends upon your reputation. And your reputation very often comes from you being an expert in a field or in an area in which you are working. So, you know how it is. If I want to get medical advice, I will go to someone who understands medicine and who is a doctor. I will not go to someone else who has no idea of what medicine is. Therefore, and the same thing in business. When you are talking about something, you need to show that you are an expert in something, that you are an expert in an area or in another area. And that is how people start listening to you. It's also important that once you have established or identified the area that you are an expert in, that you write things about it, that you speak about it in public and on platforms and in fora, which gives you the space and gives you the opportunity to show your expertise. Okay, it's important that you get your name out there in order to be associated with that particular area of expertise. Number 14, this ties in with the one before it, and it is about creating content and engagement. What we mean by this is we are living in the age of the internet, and because we are living in this age, you want to make sure that you try as much as possible to put out there your idea and to put out there your ideas, to put out there your knowledge, to put out there what you are doing, and this can be done by a number of things. There are videos, there are podcasts, there are vlogs, there are blogs. There are a number of things that you can do. And therefore, this is very important. This is quite important that your content and you generate as much engagement to that content by people reading it, sharing it, talking about it, and things like that. So having a good understanding of how social media and how the internet works, that can help you with your idea. Then, of course, you need to build relationships, and building relationships can be done both online and offline. Do not underestimate the importance of face-to-face relationships. Okay, we are still human beings, and although we are living in the age of a pandemic at the moment, and we tend to use technology a lot to communicate, still face-to-face physical relationships are extremely important. And therefore, forming good relationships, not one-sided relationships, but relationships which are beneficial for all parties in that group, giving into the relationship as much as you are getting out of that relationship, developing a strong network of people who you can rely on, a strong network of people who can help you and who you can help. That is a very important aspect of the startup idea and a very important tip to achieve success in doing startups. Number 16 is about don't be afraid to question and negotiate everything. And this is very, very important. I think you need to have a very inquisitive mind, a very inquisitive brain when you are in this business. And I think you need to question everything. Even things which have been done in the same way for hundreds of years, they need to be questioned. And I think, you should not accept the status quo. You should not always accept conventional wisdom. I appreciate that it can be scary to reject and to question things which have been done in the same way for a very long time, but it could be that is where the real opportunity for your business exists. If we did not question the idea of how banking is done today, then we would never have electronic banking and we would never have internet banks. Therefore, you need to appreciate that going against the grain, going against the current is what at the end of the day will create new ideas and disruption in the industry that you are working. So question everything, do not be afraid to do that. And I think that is very important. And also when you are negotiating, when you are discussing things, you should negotiate everything. There is always space and room for negotiation at some point, and therefore that is something which is important to be done. Of course, you need to dream big, and having the biggest dreams possible. I think it's a very important thing, but also you need to start slow. And again, this is a little bit where the mentors and the advisors come in to help you quite a bit. You need to show enthusiasm to your new business. That is great. That is very important. But at the same time, you need to be able to look at that and have some caution and some prudence in the way that you are approaching this situation. Very often, especially in the beginning, it is better to be a bit cautious in the approach that you take. And if you are doing things, you start on a small scale and then scale up into bigger numbers, rather than launching something on a big scale, and if that fails on a large scale. So you need to be open also to the possibility that things do not always work out in the way that you want them to work out, and therefore because of that, it is good to be enthusiastic. It is good to dream big. It is good to have the biggest ideas possible, but at the same time, you need to be cautious and prudent in order to be able to launch your product, launch your website, launch your idea in the best way and in the best light possible. Remember, very often what happens is if you launch your ideas and it doesn't work the first time, it might be that would be the only chance that you have to be able to launch that idea. So, being careful and being prudent is a good thing. Another thing is about fundraising and about funding. Now, funding is one, of course, of the most important aspects of entrepreneurship and of startups, but you need to be patient. I remember the first time I started speaking about an idea I had. The first two people I spoke to thought that it was a horrible idea. But then, speaking to people and speaking to different people, and they gave their views, and speaking to mentors, they tend to, you might change a little bit your idea, you might look at things a bit differently, but you need to be patient. You need to be patient to gain support for your idea. And at the same time, when it comes to raising money for your business, you need to appreciate that this could be a very long process and it could be a very challenging process. And therefore, although it could be tempting to take on the first offer that you get, it might be that that is not the right offer for your business. And therefore, you need to be careful and you need to be patient in the way that you are doing things. So the first offer is not always the right offer for you, but also you need to be patient and you need to understand that sometimes it will take time in order to be able to raise the necessary amount of funds and the necessary amount of capital that is required by your business. And remember also, and this is where things start to connect, having the right network of people, having the right mentors, having the right advisors. This is, having the right connections is what will make it a bit easier for you to be able to generate and raise the funding required and needed for your startup. The next point is make sure that you are having fun. And I think, this is extremely important. It's useless doing something which you are not enjoying. It's, at the end of the day, it was completely pointless if you are miserable every single day that you are doing your job. And therefore, although it's important to create startups, it is also very, very important that you are working in an environment which is fun and that you are having fun, that you are committed to this and that you are able to give it all yourself and give it all your energy and all your thinking without taking anything back for some time, and having fun in the process and having fun whilst doing it. If every single day you have to wake up in the morning and feel that this is not the right thing for you, or it's something that you are doing because you have to do it, then that is not the right thing. And therefore, make sure that you have fun doing what it is doing, what you are doing. And last but not least, believe in yourself. This is so important. I speak to people and I have discussed things with people, and one of the biggest differences between people who succeed and others who don't always succeed, I think these are two very important characteristics which, if you don't take anything from all that I've said, these are two things that you need to take with you. The first one is believe in yourself, believe that you've got a good idea. Of course, speak to people. Of course, you need to check with people about what you are thinking and make sure that you are on the right tracks, you have the right information, you are trying to solve a problem which really exists and which there is a need for it, but believe that you can do it. And besides that, when you are faced with strong opposition, when you are faced with hurdles, when you are faced with challenges, don't give up. Keep on going. Sometimes, you will feel that there is, it's almost impossible to overcome a particular challenge or a particular hurdle, but you cannot give up. You need to keep on going and keep on fighting and making sure that you move forward. So, what I've tried to do here is I've put together, two different aspects of what is required in an ecosystem. The first one is what is required in the general ecosystem and the infrastructure that you need in the ecosystem. The second one is focusing much more on you as an entrepreneur and what are the what are the different aspects of you as entrepreneur that you require in order to succeed as with a startup. Where do we go from here? This is my last slide. We can help you with a number of things. Reach out to us and discuss your plans. This is free of charge. Feel free to connect with us. There is my email address there, and I am sure that Vinit will provide you with his email address, and you can connect with both institutions. You can enroll in our training programs to sharpen your skills and improve your possibility to succeed. Again, we both of us together offer or will be offering a number of programs that you can enroll in, and you can achieve knowledge and expertise in helping you in your journey for startup success. You can speak to us if you are interested in starting a business in India or in Malta or in both countries, or if you are looking for partners in Malta or in India. We are happy to discuss with you this thing. We will be setting up very soon a startup community, and we encourage you that when this is launched, you join our startup community and be active members in this. And you can connect with us on social media or by email. I have listed there my email address, and feel free to connect on LinkedIn or on Facebook, on WhatsApp, or through email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Joshua, for sharing valuable knowledge. I'm sure it will help many entrepreneurs with us today. And thank you for enlightening us about the ecosystem of the startup. Now, moving forward, I will now introduce you to our very own Professor Vinit Upadhyay, Managing Director, PU Education Services. He being featured in a list 100 most admirable educator in the world by Elegant magazine. He has got significant achievement at young age and youngest in the India to clear the diploma in banking and finance by IIBE. He has authored 12 books and co-author for various subjects in University of Mumbai and Goa University. He has contributed in editing 3 books for subject of University of Mumbai, published around several national and international research papers. He is being featured in several TV networks debates as economic affair expert. Uh, I would like to ask Professor Vinay to take the platform and enlighten us to.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you so much. Uh, Joshua sir had done a wonderful presentation. I'll carry forward with my views on the same topic. In this particular presentation, I'm going to talk to you about the whole idea that how ecosystem for startups work in India. I have put in some statistics, I have put in some information which will help us to understand the whole idea of startups in India. Uh, Basically, when we are talking about this, we will be talking about the the certain quick facts that people should be aware about it. That India is the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, expected to witness growth of consistent annual growth of approximately 12 to 15% over the years. India has about 50,000 startups in 2018. Around 8,900 to 9,300 are the technology-led startups. 1,300 new tech startups were born in 2019 alone, implying 2 to 3 tech startups that are starting each and every day. Looking at the potential that India has to offer to the world, we have a maximum benefit that we can derive out of it by creating startups. And that would be a great national service that we will be doing if we are looking forward to create an employment, and starting a new startup will be helping a country in a larger perspective. When we talk about this, why indicators that we are talking about, for the growth of startups in India. So the pace of the ecosystem has increased to 15% per year in 2018. This all stats that I'm presenting to all of you has been taken up by from the Government of India's website of Startup India. So basically, while there has been growth in the number of incubators and accelerators to grown around at 11%, that is something which has been a significant growth we have seen in past few years. Significantly, a number of women entrepreneurs stood to 14%, up from 10 to 11% in previous years. So number of women, starting their startups has been increasing day in and day out, and which is a very good indication as far as India is concerned. Startups in the country have been able to create an estimated 40,000 new jobs over the year, taking the total number of jobs that are being created by the ecosystem startups to 1.6 to 1.7 lakhs, which is a very big number as far as, country where the number of people who would be asking for job will be increasing. And definitely that is going to be the best thing that we can do as far as startups are concerned. Bangalore has been listed in the world's 20 leading startup cities in 2019. This particular thing has been also ranked as one of the world's 5 fastest growing startup cities in the world. So that is something which has been a very extraordinary stats as far as India is concerned. And definitely, it gives you an idea that, how the ecosystems are working as far as India is concerned. Now, when we are talking about this, these were the certain stats that I needed to put it in front of you before I start discussing about, the startups. See, ultimately, when we are saying that, fundraising is considered to be one of the biggest challenge which is being faced by the people in India, then I want to share with you the few stats regarding the same as well, that Indian startups have gone on to raise the sizable ticket size from various global and domestic funds. The top 15 deals constituted about 40% of the total deal value, demonstrating the most of the funds are valuing deal quality more than a quantity. So we are not having startups which are not creating value. It is based on the quality of the startups, and not the number of startups that are getting funds. Private equity deal volume in India has rose second straight year, and while the average deal size declined slightly from the prior year to total $26.3 billion in 2018, was the second highest of the last decade. This particular indications are giving that people are willing to invest in India. There are a lot of FDIs who are putting in their money. There are a lot of FIIs who are willing to invest in India. We have a lot of opportunity that we can offer to our startups, and then we can create that ecosystem, which is the biggest problem which was supposed to be considered to have funds being available for the people to have their own dream startup. So if you have a very good idea, believe me guys, there is no proper problem in terms of getting the finances as far as India is concerned. When I'm talking about drivers of the ecosystem, it is very important to have two important stuff. The first one talks about the corporate connect, and second one talks about the government support. For this particular specific reason, the government of India has also started with a website where a new startups can put in their ideas in front of the venture capitalists, the private equity sponsors, as well as the institutions who are looking forward to invest, the government authorities which are there. They can take an advantage of it. It can be a platform where people can share their ideas. So that has been something which is very excellent project which has been taken up by the government of India, and it is giving an opportunity for the people to connect with the connect with the corporate as well as for the government as well. When we are talking about this, we are realizing the disruptive potential of startups that are there in India, and this is giving us a wonderful opportunity to connect with the corporate supports. Basically, Facebook, in partnership with Startup India, disbursed cash grant of $50,000 each to top 5 selected startups that were selected by the by in the Startup India contest. 10,000 women's program by Goldman Sachs, providing women entrepreneurs all around the world with a business and management education, mentoring and networking, and access to the capital. When we are talking about India, we always feel that women entrepreneurs find it difficult to get funds. But when we do detailed study, you would be able to come to know that women entrepreneurs are able to have more finances easily being brought by them rather than the male counterparts. Microsoft Venture Accelerator program in India has recently picked 16 startups, and they are going to invest a huge amount of money into that. So, the global companies are coming on the platforms like Startup India, and whereby, a smallest of the dreams are getting finances being provided to their ventures, and, they are being able to come up and, prove their potential. That has been something which has been an excellent move by the government of India. Now, government support. See, ultimately, the biggest challenge when we talk about India is most of the time the entrepreneurs find it difficult to deal with the government. So, government of India, understanding the value of working with disruptive innovators across the value chain and using their innovations to improve public service delivery. There have been an active participation by the government in terms of improvising in terms of public service delivery, so that people with an innovative ideas are not finding it difficult to sustain themselves and not going through a lot of difficulty to get the government clearances. Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying has conducted a grand challenge in association with Startup India to award top 5 startups in 5 categories with rupees 10 lakhs per Indian rupees. So this has been one of the journey whereby this kind of initiatives which are being taken up by the government is also proving to be vital, whereby a finances of this sort will help to create a potential venture to come up into reality. Small Industries Development Bank of India has launched a scheme to provide assistance to existing small medium businesses in need of a capital for its growth. Not only that, government of India in terms of providing mudra finance and other schemes have been able to give a lot of benefits and encouraging a lot of startups to come up and prove their potential. Over 26 states in the countries have set up their own set startup policies in order to promote the startups within their states, and which will be in turn in long time or in long run will be able to give you a lot of potential or employment being created over there. So when we are talking about this, it is kind of an ecosystem that is required, whereby your ideas are being considered by the corporates, they are being looked into by the government, and this particular combination of an innovator, corporate and government will solve all kind of difficulties that a young startup has to face. If you talk about this 10-20 years earlier, this was a difficult task which was supposed to be there. But now in today's date, this kind of platforms are providing this kind of wonderful opportunities to the young startups to come up and present their ideas in front of the people, and they are being able to get a lot of funds from this side. Then what are the three features of Indian economy? These three unique features are going to create a good platform for the young startups that to come. The first one is demographic dividend, where 70% of the population is less than 35 years of age, whereas an average age of an Indian would be somewhere around 25 years, compared to what you can see in US will be 40 years, in Japan it would be 52 years, and approximately in Europe it would be somewhere around 47 years. So when you talk about this, India has been having a potential of biggest market, and biggest market with the age group of 35. Not only they will demand for products, but also for an employment. And when it comes to startups, this particular population will get the maximum advantage from the startups that would be starting in this particular phase. When I'm talking about domestic consumptions, around 80% of the production in India is consumed by our own people, and only 20% is exported. We are not in very much export dependent economy, that suppose if the markets are not favoring and there has not been a potential for us to export the product, but majority of the consumptions is being done in the domestic market, which is also one of the good signs for the people in India, so that for a young startup, even in the domestic market, the potentials are very high. If we talk about the saving rate, Indian economy saving rate is somewhere around 27% of the GDP, while the world average is of around 21%. So even today, whenever we talk about the startups, we talk about the the culture, we always talk about the savings. We always been told since our childhood that uh, whatever you earn, out of that keep 20% aside for the sake of your future. And that has been something which has been a very extraordinary thing that we have been able to do. Even the lot of startups have been able to sustain because of the potentiality to safeguard and create reserves for themselves. When we talk about the GDP compositions of India, yes, of course, our GDP compositions have been very important as far as startups are concerned. If you see, a huge benefit can be seen in terms of service sector, which is contributing approximately 70%, 14% for agriculture, and 15% for industries. Over a period of time, service sector has been able to give a lot of potential, and lot of new startups which are coming up, they have been coming up in this particular segment itself. Agricultural though has least contribution, 62% of the population is dependent on agricultural livelihood, which is quite a concern. And that is how we have been able to see a lot of people moving towards urban area. So again, when these people travel to the urban areas and take back the products which are being sold in the urban area, creates a good amount of environment for your product being sold in the rural areas as well. This means that unless an agricultural sector grows at 4% per annum, GDP might find it difficult to touch 9%. And since 1993, we have been able to see that industry sector, as far as India is concerned, has been touching stagnated growth of 15% over the period of time. But again, the game changer by the government of India, Make in India concept, will bring about manufacturing sector growth into GDP. Their contribution might rise from 15% to 25%. This is not going to happen overnight. This particular thing will take time. A lot of people, a lot of startups will come up, a lot of employment opportunities need to be created, and that is what is going to help people to come up further. When we talk about this, Make in India will create a lakhs of manufacturing jobs on one hand, and other hand, it will reduce our import bills, and thus, it will help us to make our balance of payment more stronger, which is again a very good sign as far as India is concerned, because India is facing a lot of, means whenever we talk about it, our balance of payments are having deficit to a certain extent, which is a quite a concern. When the manufacturing happens in India, our dependence will reduce over the export products, import products. Macroeconomic indicators are very important. to track any economy in the world. You go anywhere in the world, this macroeconomic parameters have a huge role to play when we talk about the ecosystems going around around the world. And definitely when we talk about today's scenario, our macroeconomic parameters are strong enough to say that we have been able to have attract good amount of FDI and FIIs who can invest in India. So even when we talk about this, in 2019, before general elections, first round, when people thought that FIIs were confident enough of this government coming back to power again, FII investments poured into our stock markets, and that helped the markets to grow further. So that is something which is very important. Whenever there will be any kind of difficulty that would be faced by the people, the foreign capital will be the first one to leave your country. So you have to be very cautious about that particular part. So this whole GDP composition is very important for the purpose of understanding that India has a lot of potential for startups, and young entrepreneurs can explore these opportunities which are there and take a maximum advantage of this. So when we talk about this, I always put four programs in front, that is Make in India, Skill India, Digital India, and Startup India. These are the four programs which are going to be a game changer as far as in the coming period. When we talk about this, only thing is these plans have been made very well. They need to be implemented properly. If it is being done so, it will help us to create a lot of new startups, new ventures, and that will also be creating employment, which is considered to be a serious concern in the coming time that we are going to face. So basically, I have listed down two programs for today's program, that which are the two programs that has got a huge relevance to our today's topic, Make in India and Startup India. So basically, Make in India is a program which has been started by the government of India in order to increase the composition of manufacturing sector into Indian economy to grow from 15% to 25%. If you can remember, in my previous slide also I mentioned that we have been able to have only 15% of stagnated growth as far as industrial sector is concerned since 1993, which is a serious concern. What are the main benefits which will we be getting out of this? It will help us to create lakhs of jobs, which is a need of an hour as far as India is concerned. Reduce import bills so that our forex reserves will also improve, as well as our balance of payment will also improve. And brand of Make in India is to be globally recognized. And under this initiative, Samsung established the largest mobile manufacturing factory in India on 8 July 2018, which is creating good amount of jobs as far as that particular sector is concerned. I talk about the Startup India. What is the main objective of Startup India is to create entrepreneurs, as we are unable to create 1.5 crore jobs every year, which is as far as our population growth is concerned, the number of jobs that need to be created is not growing that fast. So that is how startups are very important as far as India is concerned. India has around 10,000 startups, which is third highest after the US and UK, which is a very big news that our youngsters are moving towards that particular risk taking abilities, and trying to explore the opportunities of having establishment of startups. Entrepreneurship has a multiplier effect of creating more jobs. So I've just taken one example. I hope there was a very beautiful movie which was Jai Ho by Salman Khan, where we talked about that whenever you do something good, say to give idea to people to help three more people and create a chain. Here we have taken an example of 60 MBA students. If they go out for a job and if they start something of their own, each person will be able to create at least three minimum jobs of office boy, marketing person, and office admin. So somewhere down the line, each MBA batch of 60 students will be able to create 180 jobs, and at that same point of time, with that 60 more people who are startups or those who are entrepreneurs, they will be also working with them. So somewhere down the line, 240 people will be occupied in the work, and that is a very big number. you know these are the small stuffs that India is requiring to look forward to. Now we come to challenges. This is a serious concern. Most of the time, when we talk about this, even my colleague Joshua sir also mentioned about this, that there are so many challenges which are being faced, but you have to be confident enough to face the challenges. The first one talks about money. First concern for any startup is to get funds to establish itself and meet its basic expectations or basic challenges or daily functioning or a working capital, what we call it as. So that is something which is a serious concern for this. But again, government of India is also taking a lot of initiatives even now. A lot of corporates who are willing to invest into various ideas. So money is, to an extent, is you just need to create a wonderful idea. If you have a very good idea worth getting good returns, definitely you will get fundings for your business. Another thing which is there is competition. See, have to believe in this, that the competition is going to be a part and parcel, where we are living into a globalized economy. Many of the people who are trying to innovate the things, they are not able to understand that competitions will be always there. You are trying to get into every time area which are totally unexplored, will not be possible. But you can bring about an innovation into the existing business model, and that would be also be a kind of competition where you can create a wonderful idea and
We are very sorry. Our speaker is facing some internet connection issues. We will continue back shortly.
I'm extremely sorry for the inconvenience. So sorry for the inconvenience. I don't know. Somehow it happened suddenly. It closed off. I'm so sorry for the viewers for the inconvenience. Uh, Venkatesh, can you help me out with from where I missed out on the idea of this?
So money problems first.
Okay, fine. So basically, when we talk about money and competition, money is a serious concern which is being faced by the lot of startups, and getting the funds nowadays is not that difficult. You need to innovate with the ideas. Unless and until you do the innovations in terms of idea, then you won't be able to get that benefit. Another thing which is there is a competition. See, you need to establish a new innovative model into the existing business. That can be also one of the ways to start up. So basically, competition will be always there. Challenges are always going to be there. But one needs to face those challenges, and that is something which is very essential for any startup. When I was talking about finding right people, it is not only about my dream, it is also about making my dream as an team dream. That is something which will help you to grow further. If you are not able to create that, get that right kind of people who would support you for getting achieving those goals, then you would be finding it difficult to sustain. As Joshua sir also mentioned, to an extent, that you need to have a right mentorship. Somewhere down the line, if we talk about, and Joshua sir will agree to me on this as well, that when we talk about this 15 years earlier, 10-15 years earlier, this concept of mentorship to start up the idea was not being seen properly or was not being explored about. But today, people with potential money, they are looking forward for an opportunity to invest into the startups, and they are ready to mentor the young generation for the purpose of reaching out to the making their dreams come reality. That is something which is very important. Financial management. Financial management is again very much important for any particular business organization. It has been seen over a period of time, there has been a lot of startups which have failed because of financial mismanagement. Financial management is a very key aspect for a young startups, and most of the time the biggest mistake which has been done by the startups is into this particular segment, and that leads to the devastating end to a very entertaining and adventurous dream. At that same point of time, young startups need to concentrate on winning the trust of the customers. It is very essential to win the trust of the customers these days. It is not going to be that easy to reach out to people, convince them to buy your product, but you will have to put in a lot of efforts for the particular creating that faith in the people to buy your products. So that is something which is a very big thing, very big challenge which is there. And nowadays, with lot many options available, customers also want to go and try out different options, so it gives you an opportunity, first opportunity to serve them. Another thing is managing risk. We talk about a year prior to the situation. Every startup or every entrepreneur who must be working, they must have gone through a challenging times in last 1.5 years, and that has been one of the major journey that nobody expected that we would be going through. So somewhere down the line, those kind of risk and challenges are always going to be there. You should never give up on those things, and never set up an unrealistic expectations. This is again very important for a startup, that never set up an unrealistic expectations that we would be able to achieve 1 crore turnover in next year. it will never happen overnight. You will have to be patient. You have to keep patience. I always quote an example of Amazon, that Amazon, whenever we talk about it, it waited to register first profit of the organization for 11 years. It requires a lot of patience. It needs to be taken care like a baby. And once you do it, definitely, believe me, your startup can take care of you in the future as your parent. When we talk about this, I give three, key aspects for an entrepreneur that they must remember. Attitude. Attitude is something which is very important for a startup. Why it is very important? It is important because it gives you that particular positivity and continuous strive and hunger to go behind your dream and try to achieve that particular dream. Approach. Your approach should be positive enough in order to make sure that you are not going to give up on your ideas. It is very important. And consistent hard work. Never be dependent on the people to get your work done, or outside agencies to give you the work being done for you readily, but always consistently work and give consistent services to the people. And definitely in the time to come, you entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, would be into the list of topmost entrepreneurs in the world. Again, wherever I go, I tell this particular two statements to every young entrepreneur. Results are always not important, but process is. It is not that whether you could achieve that amount of profit or not, but at that same point of time, what kind of effort that you put in, what kind of process you did for the purpose of reaching out to that particular level, is very important for me, rather than your financial balance sheets. And most important, by Lindsay Mensu, who was a photographer and an entrepreneur. Starting your own business is like riding a roller coaster. And believe me, um most of you will agree with me on this, that we have been able to have that particular feeling of a roller coaster ride. There will be highs and lows. Every turn you take, there is another twist. The lows are really low, but highs can be really high. You have to be strong, keep your stomach tight, and ride along with the roller coaster that you started with. That would be my today's advice to the young entrepreneurs, that never give up. India is one of the highest in terms of number of startups that are starting every year, but at that same point of time, majority of them are not able to sustain for a longer period of time. That is something where you have to always remember this particular line by Lindsay Mensu. With this, I would conclude my presentation. I'd be sharing details of how you can get in touch with us. These are the details that we have. You can approach us over here. And with this, I will hand over Venkatesh, that we can go ahead for a session on quiz,
Thank you,
question
Vinit
answer.
sir, for enlightening us about the topic. It was, I'm sure it was very helpful to our viewers. Now, with those in-depth information from our experts, I would like viewers to post their questions in the chat box, and we must move forward with those questions and seek answers from our experts. So, moving forward, our first question will be for Mr. Joshua. Sir, you with us, sir?
I am here.
You with us, sir? Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So the first question is for you, sir. Like, why startups are important?
What was the question again? Sorry, I missed you.
Why startups are important?
Why
Or
startups are important? Okay,
yeah.
well, that's a very good question, and I think startups are an essential uh, organization, an essential thing for two reasons. One of them is because through startups you are creating new business, and therefore you are creating more wealth and more opportunities. That's the first one. The second, and this is important, is that startups are known to be one of the biggest generator of employment when it comes to employment figures. And therefore, if you just take a look at the number of people employed with startups, both in India, in Malta, and around the world, you will see that startups are able to generate quite a bit of employment. And therefore, I think, without new ideas, without new thinking, without people who are ready to go out there and create new things, um, we will not have any innovation in our business, and startups create that innovation. And thanks to startups, then we can create even more employment for the people in the different countries.
Thank you, sir. Our next question is for Professor Vinit. Uh, why is a business planning important, and who should write it?
You cannot go and have a business which is being established without a business plan. Any particular idea which is in my mind, unless and until I put down on a piece of paper how a particular person who would be going through my idea would be able to understand it properly. So that is one of the reasons why you need to have business planning being done. And that is how business plan is an essential part. As we talked about it, a lot of venture capitalists are there are government agencies who are helping. Unless and until I would be able to present my ideas to them, they will be giving me a very less time. But when it is being written on a piece of paper, I might be able to convey my ideas in better way. And that is where the opportunity for getting my fundings for my ideas will be much better. So that is first thing. Who should write it? You should always take an expert advice for that particular part. And as sir rightly mentioned, that this is one of the reasons why you need a mentor and a perfect guide for the particular purpose of writing your business plan, who would be able to make sure that what you are thinking is exactly coming out on a piece of paper. And that is again a very tricky task, but again with the help of expert you can do it very easily.
Thank you, sir. Next question coming up for Mr. Joshua. What are few most important things to consider when starting a business?
Uh, there's a big list to think about, but when you are starting a business, I think the most important thing is the idea that you have. And does that idea make sense? What problem are you trying to solve? And what is it that you want to do? And then do you believe enough in that idea to be able to go at it for a very long time? At the end of the day, if you are not convinced of the idea that you have, then no, you won't be able to convince anyone else. Then besides that, you need to, as Vinit was talking, you need to be able to pitch that idea to other people, and therefore you need to create your business plan. You need to identify where the financing is going to come from, and be able to implement that idea. Because sometimes, you can come up with an idea which you cannot do, and therefore you need to find a way of how to make it happen. And with your resources, with the resources that you can get, with the knowledge that you have, with the knowledge that you can get, and be able to implement it. So I think if I had to summarize, of course you need to have a good idea, and then you need to have a good plan for that idea, and then you get the funding for that idea, and start moving and act as quickly as possible.
Thank you, sir. Uh, Next question will be for Vinit sir. With India and growing startup culture in India, what are what could be the biggest obstacle for the startups in India?
See, the biggest problem we have is, about people going forward to have more of, approach towards taking the risk. Now, today's generation is, sufficiently being skilled for the purpose of taking up the risk, but they are not willing to. Even today, when you talk about India, majority portion, certain parts of the country are totally dependent on working towards getting a government jobs. Boss, ultimately, starting your own venture is something like, very extraordinary journey. And that is something where you need to work about. Now, in fact, I would like to also mention over here that, there was one concept which was being given by the government of India, whereby pakoda economy word came into the picture as far as India was concerned. But always remember, the idea of the government was very clear in stating this, that even a person who is starting a roadside stall also is able to give employment to a person and able to earn something for himself. He is employed. That is something which is very important in today's situation. I'm not talking to go word by word meaning of that, but what I'm trying to say over here is that ultimately, those small startups in the years to come will become a big businesses. Okay, Dhirubhai Ambani, or what we talk about Mr. Tata, they never became an out of blue successful entrepreneurs. They were the ones who strived hard, they worked hard, they proved themselves, and slowly and gradually, by climbing a ladder, they reached up to this mark. So somewhere down the line, it is also very essential to understand this particular aspect as well. That with startups, with that kind of a dream is also very important, that I should be able to climb ladder peacefully. I should not be able to see this as a shortcut to attain my goals of, earning good amount. It will take a lot of sacrifice with it. So that attitude which is there, there needs to, be a certain kind of work that needs to be done. Some of the startups give up because of the funding. Some of the startups give up because of the, loss of interest by the young entrepreneurs. They are not feeling enjoying into that particular part. They give away in between to that particular thing. That is again very big concern as far as India is concerned. So to sum up this, again, no shortcuts. That particular attitude need to change. There has to be an attitude that, a startup will create a lot of employment. There will be troubles. I should be ready to face this. It will be a beautiful journey that I would be able to enjoy, and don't give away. That is something which is very important.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful explanation. Next question coming up for Mr. Joshua. Uh, how to check if the business idea is scalable?
Well, that's a very good question. Well, there are different ways of how you can do that. So if I understood you correctly, is how do you check that your idea is sellable, right? That is the question.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so as I said, there are different ways of how you can do that. Of course, the first thing that you need to do is that is why you have mentors and you have advisors. You need to speak to them and see what they think about it. Secondly, you need to also understand what is this idea trying to solve? What is the product that you are, or the service that you are trying to sell? Thirdly, then there are other things such as market research that will help you do research about that idea and try to understand whether what you are trying to sell is something which is required by the society in which you are working or in which you are operating. What is also very important and something that you need to think about is that when you come up with an idea, normally the first idea that comes to mind is not necessarily the best idea that you can have. You need to give it time to develop. You need to give it time to mature and to be formed in a good way. Okay, and that is very, very important. And you do that by speaking to people, by bouncing off your ideas with other people within the sector, within the industry that you are working in. One of the things, and this is something that I referred to in my presentation, is one of the reasons why we have communities, especially when it comes to startups, is precisely because of this. Because when you are in a community, you've got the support around you, you've got people who are like-minded, just as you are. There are people who understand the industry. There are people who are going through exactly the same things that you are going through. And therefore, you can discuss with them, you can, pick on their brains, see what they think about your ideas. And of course, there needs to be a lot of trust, and there needs to be a lot of things that, a lot of relationship between the people that are working there. But I think, talking about your idea to different people, to your community, to your mentors, I think that is the best test. And then, of course, as I've said, if you have the funding, and it is important to do this, and then doing research about your idea and doing market research and the different things that we do when we are doing these things will also help you understand whether it is a good idea or not. The last test, or the best test, is when you put your idea out there, are people ready to pay for it? And that is when you would know whether your idea was a good idea or not.
Thank you, sir. Next question coming up for Vinit, sir. Do you think startup culture is disturbing the traditional business forms?
Always remember this. Would you prefer to go to a tea shop which your father used to visit? You now look forward to have a tea point where a good environment and ambience is being given importance, a good presentation of the tea, which is important. It is not disrupting, it is innovating. It is giving a new dimension to that business. I can talk about this. There is one venture which was started in Gujarat. I can really well remember that started selling, khakras and tea together. And that is, a traditional food outlet which was transformed into a new culture, new sitting style, new ambience. And he could have a franchise of his business being established all across Gujarat very easily. So please don't take it in this way. Even our traditional businesses, those who do not change with the time, will have to go to a closure. So rather than that, that innovations will help them to, transform themselves and, sustain for a longer period of time, which is very important for them. So again, it is not disrupting the traditional businesses, but it is giving a new dimensions to those areas, which maybe the family business, the maybe my father might not have thought about it, but I have that particular idea because I had been into that culture of CCD and everything, Starbucks and everything, where I have learnt about this. So I know that what kind of expectations that people have. So accordingly, if I transform my business, that will help my business to grow further. And any businessman will always welcome, profits and, good amount of people's approach and people's love towards his business. So definitely, that is something which is very essential, that people trust you, people visit you over and over again, buy products from you, and give you a lot of returns. That is, a treat for any entrepreneur. He will take it any day, given whatever you would give it to him, he will take it that particular thing with both hands.
Thank you, sir, for in-depth explanation. Next question coming up for Joshua, Mr. Joshua. What are emerging sectors where one can start up and the investment ideas for the same?
Oh, okay. Well, what are the emerging sectors? there are different ones. So of course, I think rather than asking what is the emerging sector that you want to invest in, I think you need to question or ask yourself, what are you interested in and what makes you happy and that you will wake up every morning to go to work. And that is the main question to ask. Then of course, you can be an entrepreneur in any sector that there is. Of course, technology is the most common and the one that we hear most about. But even other areas such as biotech, for example, pharmaceuticals, medicine, um, hospitality. There are so many different areas that you can be an entrepreneur in, and that you can do things to disrupt the industry. Sometimes it doesn't take a very big thing for a newcomer to look at things in a different way. During the presentation I was giving, I mentioned how internet banking companies have disrupted the banking industry, and has left large banks that we were accustomed to, at least my age was accustomed to, that there is a bank that you go to, and you go there and there is a teller or a cashier, and you give them your money, and they sell you their services and all that. And nowadays, now all of that has disappeared, and there are banks that you do everything that you need to do from your mobile phone. That is a huge disruption to the banking industry, and no one would have ever thought about that. So I think the most important thing is that you really think about what is it that you are interested in, what is it that makes you happy, what is it that is fun for you to do, and also what is your expertise, what is the industry that you are mostly aware of, that you know very well, that you are ready to change, and what is this idea which can change it, what are the things that the businesses in that industry are worried about, and what are the big questions that they need to ask, and what are the solutions. And that is how you will identify the solution which would disrupt that industry, which would solve the problem of that industry, and which will give you the opportunity to invest and come up with a startup which will address that particular challenge that the industry is facing. So to be honest, I cannot really say, go for this industry or go for that industry. What is important is that you do something which is of interest to you, which you understand, which you are happy to do, which will make you wake up every day in the morning for the next few years and go to work with the energy, with the drive, and with the wish and the want to succeed and to make a difference in the lives of the people that work within that industry and in the businesses that operate in that industry.
Can I supplement in this to a very short supplement to this?
Yes, sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Always remember this. Startups are giving you a lot of adventures every day. So that is something which is always you should do what you like. Okay. Now, if anyone asks me, educational services concept was very new at that time. Means people do provide these services, but not under the name of educational services. And then, when you come out with this, people will go ahead and think in a similar direction. You need to change that approach. And at that same point of time, I totally agree with you that it should give you an excitement on Monday that I have to go to the office for a work. That is something which is very essential. Then you would be able to succeed. And that's what, I always say, if you remove education from Vinit Upadhyay, zero thing is left. So that is something which is very essential for people to understand that what I am good at is what something where I can transform the things. That is something which is very essential.
Thank you. That was a very good explanation for the question. And thank you, Vinit, sir, for adding your views on the same. Moving forward for the next question. The next question is for Vinit, sir. Please suggest some ideas for the startups.
As sir rightly mentioned, in one of the answers also, that there cannot be a perfect recipe for a idea. Okay. And idea in my mind cannot be there conceived by anyone else. So that is something which is my baby, which I can take care of. So definitely, that is something which is going to be very important. So there cannot be a, you know, idea that I can give it on this platform that you do this. Okay, this is where you need to innovate on yourselves. Each and every individual has to have their own unique idea, which will transform that particular thing into a big business enterprise. That is very essential. So I can say that, pandemic changed a lot of potentials for those areas where people were not finding opportunities. Now there are so many, closures of business have happened, so that, the competition to an extent has gone down, which can be explored by the people to get good opportunity and good market share in the near future. So obviously, any idea, but it has to be original one. It has to be innovative one. Nobody else should have taken it, and you should be able to innovate it on your own. That is something which is very essential. Nobody can give you a tip for, perfect idea that you should do business on. It is you who have to decide that on what idea you should do your business.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure that would have solved many queries of our viewers. Next question is coming up from our viewer. What source of external financing are used by innovative startup? And this question is from Mr. Joshua.
Can you repeat the question? I know it's about financing, but I did not understand what the question was.
What source of external financing are used by innovative startups?
Okay, what source of financing do startups use, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I've mentioned this earlier on. There are different types of financing that a startup can use. I think, the most common when it comes to startups is family and friends. So own funds, family and friends are your biggest supporters very often, but not necessarily the right ones, because of course you need to have the support of your family and of your friends. But when it comes to business and when it comes to money, it's always a good thing to keep the two things separate as much as possible. But having said that, family, friends, and own funding is the first one that normally comes to mind. Then, of course, there are different types of funding and different types of financing that can be done. Nowadays, of course, there are people who are ready to invest in your idea, and these can be venture capitalists or venture capital, and these would be organizations or people who are investors who are interested in different ideas and in different startups, and who are ready to support financially the startup. It is not just through the financial support, but very often these sort of organizations and these sort of people will also provide advice and mentorship to the startups. So that is the first one. There are also what we call angel investors, and these are similar, but primarily these are investors who are interested in the startup, in the technology, or in the industry that you are working in, and they are ready to finance and fund part or your startup as is required. Something very new is what we call crowdfunding. And with regards to crowdfunding, it is when you pitch your idea to the public in general, and people are happy to fund through normal people in society who are ready to put their money into your venture. It is something relatively new, and it is very often done online. What happens is that there are specific sites that allow you, internet sites that allow you to pitch your ideas and to go out there and seek funding in that way. Another way of funding your ideas and funding startups is through taking loans through banks. And again, this is the more traditional way, but you need to be, you need to have a really good idea. And very often banks do not necessarily like to take a lot of risk. and then therefore you can go for a loan at a bank, and then you need to give them a guarantee or um, some sort of property or something like that, which you would put in, as a guarantee in order for them to be protected for the money that they're going to give you. Very often, a lot of startup companies and a lot of entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs, do not have the possibility to do that. And therefore, that is one of the more difficult things, maybe something which is used by the more mature organizations. But having said that, another source of funding are the schemes that the governments and the countries would have for startups. And sometimes certain schemes would be that they would provide guarantee to the banks themselves, so that the banks can lend the money to the startup, while the government or the institutions, the national institutions supporting the startup, bring out or enter themselves as guarantors, and therefore they would support the startup in that way. There are a lot of different ways of how you do it. As I've said earlier, you need to be very patient in the way you approach it. It's not something that will happen overnight. You work very hard. You need to be quite skilled in the way you do it. You can imagine, investors will see, tens and hundreds of business plans and of ideas in front of them on a weekly basis, and therefore yours needs to really stand out in order for them to capture their interest and to capture their excitement. So, in all of that, there is all of those things that you can use for funding in order to be able to fund your startup.
Thank you, sir, for those details. It definitely would have helped our viewer. Next question coming off for Vinit, sir. What strategy can promote startup growth in developing countries like India?
Basically, if you ask me, it is a need of an hour. It is much more than, the passion or adventure. It is much more necessity nowadays. So in order to create employment for the 70% of the population that would be demanding employment in the coming years, it is going to be a task that we will be facing. And that is how, startups are not only just the, adventurous ride or, kind of an innovations only, but also the necessity as far as Indian economy is concerned. So I would always try to put forward, an example of India, as in that, developing countries need to focus on creating this, because a lot of industrial growth is required for them to, prosper and propel to become the developed economy. So definitely, with the kind of cultural change that is going around the world, where startups are not considered to be the, and different approach which has been seen by the market, where, a lot of businessmen are also putting in their money into the ideas of people. So definitely, these things are very, very, very critical for us. So rather, when we talk about India specifically, I would put this as an, it is a necessity of a time for us to concentrate much more on startups rather than anything else.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for that explanation. With our time coming close, we are heading towards our last two questions. Next question coming up for Joshua, sir. How profitable is it for a startup to jump its business into tax haven?
To jump its business into
Tax havens.
I did not get it. Sorry, something is wrong with the internet, I think.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question? How beneficial is it for startups?
Venkatesh, you are on mute actually.
I'm really sorry. How profitable is it for a startup to jump in its business module into a tax haven?
A tax haven?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, you need to be very careful about that. I'm not exactly the best person to discuss or to answer such a question because I don't know a lot about tax havens and tax. But I think if you are a startup, you need to focus. You need so much help from the government and from the community around you that thinking about tax havens is not something that normally comes up when we are discussing startups. I think a startup is there to create a new venture, is there to create new employment opportunities, new technologies, new way of doing things to disrupt the industry. And the advice I always give is that whenever you are trying to establish such a company, you should establish it in the country where you are doing the work that you are doing. Therefore, thinking about things like tax haven and things like that, I don't think it's the right way to go. And that if you are, focusing on a new thing, and you are trying to get the support of the country where you are operating and of the people that you are working with, then I think it's only fair that you pay the taxes in the place where, all the help is being given to you and where you are trying to create the business. So primarily, I think that is not one of the discussions that we would entertain in a discussion with someone who is interested in doing a startup.
Yeah, I would like to add a small supplement to this, that
Yes, sir, for sure.
whenever you are starting up, just now, rather than jumping here and there, it is better to play on the field that you know the best. So nothing is best than your domestic markets, because you know the market well and market knows you well. That is something which can be a very healthy thing, at the junction of starting points. So startups, for them, it is always advisable to have an home advantage. That is very essential. Jumping to tax havens and everything comes at a very later stage. So at that junction, you should never think about jumping your model into the tax havens. First, establish, put your foot uh, strongly into the domestic markets and then think about anything else. Not advisable to talk about tax havens at this junction of startups.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vinit, sir. Thank you, Joshua, sir, for that detailed explanation. Moving forward with our last question of the day, uh, does the emergency of new technologies create new market niche for the development of innovative startup?
So who's answering this? Is it Vinit or myself?
Vinit, it was for Vinit, sir.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. Does the emergency of new technologies create new market niche for the development of innovative startups?
See, obviously, new technology will always create that niche for the new people. And, it is always that people will come and go, the business entities will also come and go. They will be there for a longer period of time, but of course, it will create a niche. See, who would have thought that, Spotify will come, or a kind of an application like Ghana app, which will transform the whole thing, that you don't need to have a cassettes, you don't need to have an compact disc CDs, you don't need to have anything, you just need to have an internet. So obviously, that new kind of technology emergence is always going to create new, niche in the markets, and that would be something which will be creating a lot of opportunities. So, if someone starts with some idea, maybe someone else might capitalize on it by improvising on his idea. So that can be also one of the ways of innovating the product.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for that detailed explanation. With this, we should proceed forward for the sum up of our discussion, today's discussion. I'm sure one day is not enough for such big topic of detailed explanation on startup, and with such two expert with vast experience in the field. So I would like to call my colleague Jaina to sum up the.
Hi.
Venkatesh, can
Yes,
we
sir.
take one question which has come up, that what sort of startups should be focused during the COVID-19 pandemic? See,
Yes, sir. Sure.
ultimately, this is something which is very important question. When we talk about COVID-19, the kind of disruption that it has done to the lot of economies is something which is very essential to be answered. So that's how, I'm just stopping you and I'm taking this question up. See, pharmaceutical concerns, or you can talk about a lot of, other ideas. There have been so many small ventures of food joints and everything, healthy food, nutritional food. All these concepts have been started to, grow around. A lot of things which are there with immunity boosting and all those things are coming up. So obviously, looking at the need of an hour, more of an consciousness of the health is being on the primary side as far as COVID-19 is concerned. And sir, I would like him to also put up his views in a short for this, that ultimately, pharmaceutical is there, or there are so many other sectors in terms of who have suffered a huge transformations. Okay, that is something which is very essential to be seen. Like what we thought of, online education, we have acquainted ourselves to a certain extent. Even today when we are taking up this session, most of the people are listening to us online. This you might not have heard about 5 years or 10 years down the line. Before this 10 years you would not have seen that. So of course, this is going to be a transformation. Of course, you can say that education will not be replaced thoroughly, but then at that same point of time, certain transformations will happen into this as well. So I guess education and healthcare sector are going through a major transformation. Sir, you would like to add anything into this? I would be happy that you give your concluding remarks on that.
Yes, I think this idea about COVID, what we need to question really is not whether it is COVID or something else, but what did the pandemic do? And think about it in the sense that it has created so much disruption in almost every sector of the economy. If you look at aviation, 97% of the flights have stopped. If you look at hospitality, 92, 95% of the hospitality industry is closed. So, what do we need to do to be able to deal with these situations? And I think if we need to think about something, we need to think about that. We need to think about how can we, or what products, what services can we create to be able to deal with a similar situation such as this. This is not the last pandemic that we will have. It is not the last disruption that we will have. So how are we going to be prepared for the future? So, yes, of course, I agree with Vinit about, education, online education, and how that can be done, about biotechnology, about healthcare technology, about food, about, a number of things. I think Vinit and myself talk enough, and we are in agreement on a lot of things. But I think what we really need to look at is the foundations, and we need to understand, what can we do if something like this happens again? And if we come up with some ideas of how we can tackle it, then you've got an investment opportunity right there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now I would like my colleague Jaina to take session forward.
Hi. Now I take the privilege to thank each and everyone for being a part with us in the wonderful session. To being with, I would start thanking our speaker, Mr. Joshua and Mr. Vinit, for sharing their valuable input. I would like to thank entire back team and interns for putting up this event. Last but not the least, thanks to wonderful audience. Few introduction for the participants. Feedback link is posted in the YouTube description box and it will be active only for 1 hour. request all participants to fill the form with all details correctly. E-certificates will be sent by email to all participants who have filled the feedback form. I thank everyone once again. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.